Hello, it's Bev and Kate, and it's Card School number 10, number 11, one or the other, not sure which. And we are just having a wee think about what this is a long question. What do we think makes the difference in the way we make time to think and to do? So, this is kind of come at us because we're bumping up against people all the time who are struggling to find time to think, who are struggling to find time to do the stuff they know they need to do outside of the meetings they know they need to be in. And it's got us thinking about how we find a way to think, because I think we rarely forsake our time to think. Well, that sounds a bit serious, doesn't it? We don't give it up lightly because we value it. But I wonder what it is that makes the difference to us and why we think it makes a difference. What do you think, Kate?
So the first thing I think that comes to my mind is when I know that I've got that time and space to think, I feel different. So I feel much more at ease that I have got everything, and I suppose that easy feeling allows me to access all of the brain power that I need, because I don't feel tense and stressed and, oh my goodness, I have to do this tomorrow because but I'm like, it just gives me that little bit of leeway, that little bit of runway, which is why I think one of the reasons why I really value it and therefore do more of it, because it makes me feel different in the way that I'm able to do my thinking, because it's not on the rush and the hurry up. There's enough time to go, I think that's what I think, and then come back to it and revisit it and to iterate it a bit, and then to notice stuff as well, and then to come back to it, rather than it just be, right, I need to do it now because there is no other option. So that ease and that feeling of ease is one of the things. What about you, Bev? What else?
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think, when you're under such a massive time pressure that you have to sit down and work it out, like really force it, grind out the answer. And I find that doesn't work for me. And I'm not a big fan of working late into the evening trying to force a solution. And I've got a real example from this last week where I've been briefed on something, and then I've done a first pass at what I think my thinking is, and then I have noticed that I've not been able to produce the thing I need to produce, which is an agenda to explain my thinking, because it's not quite right. I'm not quite there. So rather than force it and push it and be obsessive about, I need to get it out so people can read it, wonder about it, I've actually just allowed a bit of time and some ease for me to notice other things that might be relevant to the solution. And then this morning, having started working it on sort of Wednesday or Thursday night maybe, I've then sat down this morning and it's all just poured onto the page, crystal clear vision of what I think the solution is that the client needs, and a nice, neat and tidy agenda that describes exactly how we're going to use our time together this week to thrash out the final stages of the solution. But if I pushed that on Friday to get it done before the weekend because I felt I ought, not that anyone's set an expectation that I should, then what I would have come up with would not have been as good as what it is now. So I'm much happier. I've been able to be more resourceful, which is a bit like what you were saying before. So that feels like a thing that works for me, having that iterative approach. And sometimes I think you were saying as well, you can write something 2 weeks ago and then you revisit it a few days before and your thinking has naturally evolved. But if we're only ever working on the thing that's right in front of our noses because there's no space in our diaries to actually think about it, then I don't think we're getting we're coming up with the best solutions or doing the best thinking. What else do you think?
Yeah, that was just making me think, it's like you're always working on your first rough draft, if that's the case, isn't it? It's like, that's my first scribble. Oh, that's my only time for scribbling. There we go. I'm going to have to go with that. So, I mean, one of the real practical things is at the beginning of each week, I have got an hour that's just blocked out for diary planning. And it sounds really boring, but actually what I do is just kind of have a look at what's nearing the front of my nose and then what's slightly more off and what's slightly further off. And that just allows me to put in some time and to make sure that nobody else steals that off me. I know I've got the time. It's there. It'll remind me to do it. But it means that there'll be a better result at the end of it as well. And I know that when I don't do that and things do start to kind of pile up, I really regret it. And I think to myself, why have I done this to myself? Because it kind of is a bit like that, isn't it? That it almost feels like you're doing it to yourself if you haven't blocked stuff out and given yourself that time that you know that you need to do. So just, real practical stuff at the beginning of the week. And it's just a regular habity thing. It's in my calendar. And if I can't do it in the morning, I move it to the afternoon, but I definitely do it because it means I can go, I've had a bit of think about this. So therefore I know if there's pinch points or if I know there's stuff that I perhaps need to reprioritize or what have you, because I've had a look. What else for you, Bev?
So that talks to that thing about we can either think now or we can think later. We're going to have the thinking is essential, isn't it? We can't actually take any action on anything without thinking. Sometimes we leave ourselves a microsecond to do the thinking. And even when it's an emergency, I don't know, a fire alarm goes off or a window blows in or whatever it is, you can think in that moment. But it's a different kind of thinking that we're talking about. It's not the instant survival stuff. This is the intellectual stuff. But you will at some point have to think about the thing. So that makes me realize the importance of that regularity and frequency of having that time to think. So you do it that way. I do something similar, just at a different time in the week. And I remember when I was doing my clarity practitioner stuff with Jamie Smart, we talked about highest value actions, HVAs, but it stuck with me. So I remember what those things are. So it means the thinking that I do should be around those highest value actions. And then that keeps me purposeful and intentional as well around things. But unless I've got that regular time planned in, then like you say, everything just suddenly all crowds in on you and you haven't made the space to think about it. And that's the same for all the other thinking partner sessions that I have across the month. I now use those to think about something that's pertinent to a work thing, a client project, whatever it is, so that I've got someone who I've got some time in the diary where I'm practicing thinking and practicing being a thinking partner and experience that quality attention, but I'm thinking about something useful. So I know that I've always got that time dedicated. And when there've been pressure points over the year, the thinking time is the last thing that I've sacrificed. I'd rather do that than do, because I need the time to think before I do the do. What else has it made you think about?
So it was making, just listening to you, it was making me think about how much more enjoyable it is when you know that if you start, you've got a blank page in front of you and you're like, not sure, don't know. It's still okay just to put a couple of things down and think, well, I've made a start. It's like that. I've made a dig of soil out of the ground for planting my tree. I've just started. Don't know how to finish it, but that's okay because I've started. And that it's so much more enjoyable knowing that I can then legitimately put it down, pick it up again at some point when I'm perhaps feeling a bit more inspired and carry on with it, versus, well, it's painful, but I have to do it anyway. So let's just do something. So yeah, that enjoyment piece was just making me think about that as well. And it was also making me think then about, that sort of first step, first sort of, foot in the ground, as it were. Just thinking about, we were talking about the cards and thinking out loud, but actually doing some do with your thinking. And that's one of the things I really like about cards, is that if I want to do some thinking with them, I have them, I lay them out. It looks like I've done something, but I've also been thinking at the same time, and that feels really purposeful. So yeah, just feeling like I have made some progress, I suppose I'm thinking about there. And the cards are useful for that, because it's not just ethereal in your head thinking. It can be visual out on the desk, in piles, in rows, in whatever format that I want to do, feels like I have made some progress with something that can sometimes just feel a bit like, if you put thinking time in, it feels quite difficult to get a handle on. But as you were talking about having a thinking partnership, doing it in a kind of, using your process, but also thinking well, you really feel like you've got something to show for it at the end of it as well. What about you? What else?
Yeah, so that new card we added, the free versus guilty, it was because of that, wasn't it? It was because of how pointless it is feeling guilty about thinking, because we all do it, but we're either doing it now or we're doing it later, and we're doing it in a hurry. So better to do it in an easeful state and not feel guilty about it, so that we can be freer to think well and to do what we need to do. So hence the birth of the free versus guilty card, so people don't feel guilty about thinking. But I like what you were saying about the using the cards. It feels like you're doing something with your thinking, and I think there's just such in society and in the workplace, I think we're surrounded by this, the messaging all the time about being really productive and being really focusing how you use your time, but that doesn't necessarily mean people are creating value. So I can think for 8 minutes and get an answer to something. I don't need all day. And actually a time limit's really useful. Take all the time you need in the next 8 minutes. And so, but people are, but that, I don't think that's an obsession about using all the minutes really wisely. It's an obsession about trying to use the minutes so that they add value, because I won't get these minutes back ever. They don't get topped up again, do they? So I may as well make sure I'm using the minutes on something that is meaningful to me or to others, and that it's something that adds value. And sometimes adding value is just frittering the minutes away, doing something meaningless. But going back to the point about the obsession that people have about productivity and grinding something out of every moment, I don't think that's helpful to our thinking, because it's not just that we want to produce any old rubbish. We want to be producing the thing that has the highest value, the biggest impact on us or other people that we do what we do for. And that applies whether it's you and I creating value for our clients, or whether it's someone inside an organization thinking about, am I actually adding the most value I possibly can by being here in this moment doing this thing? And if not, I need to do something else. And that links back to something we've been thinking about before, about whether we're actually thinking in that moment, or whether we're being persuaded to opt out, to sort of lose our agency around our own thinking, go, well, I probably should be there because they've asked, or I probably should do it because somebody's put it on my task list. But we should really be thinking about the highest value actions and how we create that value, not how we keep busy. Because busy is just a distraction, whereas creating value surely is what humans are on the planet to do. Oh, how we've gone deep quickly.
Oh gosh. Maybe we need to leave it there. I don't know. Can we go any deeper? But yeah, that obsession with being busy. How are you? I'm busy. Everybody does it. I stop myself when I feel like that's going to be my response. How are you getting on? Oh, I'm busy. But yeah, I like the that sort of guilt-free thinking. And it is a good card to ponder on, isn't it? I think, in terms of, are you really free to do your own good thinking, or are you guilty of being guided by others just because you're always at that meeting? Well, I always go to that meeting, so why would I not? But is that actually the right thing for you to do? And it's all meetings, isn't it? I think it feels like to me everybody's job is just going to meetings currently. Which I'm not sure that really is their job. But we were talking about, weren't we, the difference maybe between being your own boss versus being employed by somebody else. Does that make it easier, less easy to choose to say yes or no, to make sure that you have gaps to do your work and to do your thinking, versus just back-to-back meetings that are dictated to by somebody else? I don't think we've got to the bottom of that, but it's an interesting thought to have. how would you be different if you were to imagine that you worked for yourself, that your name was on the poster all of the time, so people were equating the quality of what you did with what you did?
So when someone says to you, how are you? And you want to reply, I'm busy. What is the opposite of busy? Because unbusy is a bit naff. Or is it, I'm unbusy, thank you for asking. What is the opposite? I am spacious. I don't know. I am just sort of bigger. What is the opposite of busy? What are you if you're not busy? I am
marvelous. I'm just marvelous. Busy. It's if you're not busy, it means you have. I'm spacious. I have ease. I am easeful. I have. Yeah, I don't know, but just not busy. Because busy is next. What's next? What's next? What's next? So it's just I've got gaps. How are you? I've got gaps.
We have to think of a word, don't we? We need to think of an opposite. I am free. I am spacious. I am. I don't know. But that, if you and I, we're good with words, right? If you and I can't think of a word that is the opposite of busy, because you don't want to say, well, I'm quiet, because that's not the opposite either. But you and I can't think of a word that is the opposite of busy. It's no wonder that it's the default response. In the same way, what do you do? I am an X. This is my job title. That's not what you do, though, is it? So we're not answering the questions in the right way necessarily, because they're not the whole truth. But I don't know what the opposite of.
And I'm just thinking about at capacity, but then that just sounds really naff, doesn't it? Because you want to be under capacity, you want to have gap. You want to have a gap between your limit and your load. I have a sufficient gap, thank you for that.
I'm easeful, thank you.
I'm easeful.
I don't know, that just sounds
and smug and superior.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that that's the answer, but I think just not being able to articulate that lack of busy just points to how difficult it is to describe what it is we are when we're not busy, and how it feels. If there's not a word for it, it's obviously wrong, because if we don't say, spacious, I've got gaps, I'm not busy, how are you? Not busy, because that feels like a bad thing. Always, because the danger is you say you're not busy and someone thinks if you're a self-employed individual that you are therefore not performing, or you've got more capacity if you're an employee and therefore let's push some more things your way. And that actually then leads to that green tick anxiety phenomenon that we won't have time to talk about now, but the fact that people are so concerned about being available even in a digital setting, and that they don't feel they can step away from their green tick on Teams or the green dot on Zoom that shows that they're available. But we're not available, and the thing about that is it's all about attention. We cannot possibly give all of our attention all of the time to our work. We have to sometimes be giving that attention to ourselves, to our biology, to go for a bathroom break or a walk around or some fresh air or a drink. It's impossible to have, and that's the I think there's a bit of confusion in there about what it is we're giving. It's not our physical availability, it's actually our attention. We can't give that quality of attention. So do you think we should leave it there?
I'm still thinking about what is this aspiration. If it's not to say busy, what is it to say? We'll be back. We'll tell you at some point when we've worked it out.
And we've decided. But yes, this has been Card School with a gentle mention of the cards, because we have used the cards to shape our thinking for this conversation today. But thank you for listening. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.